The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such panic. Beings from across the galaxy gathered in the massive chamber on Nexus Prime, their voices creating a chaos of different languages and sounds. At the center of it all stood Threll, the tall crystalline council speaker. His body glowed with a deep blue light that showed his deep worry. "The Velani homeworld has less than 3 days," Threll announced to the gathered aliens. His voice echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. "The harvesters have broken through their final defense grid. Vela 3 will fall, and with it, an entire civilization." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what the harvesters meant. These mechanical monsters had been eating planets for over 300 years. They came like a storm of metal and death, turning living worlds into empty rocks. No military force had ever stopped them. The best anyone could do was run. 17 advanced species have already reviewed the situation, said Zephys, the military advisor. His 6 arms moved nervously as he spoke. "All agree that rescue is impossible. The harvester fleet is too large, too powerful. We can only offer to evacuate what survivors we can reach." In the viewing screens around the chamber, the dying world of Vela 3 appeared. The beautiful blue-green planet was already showing brown, scars where the harvesters had begun their work. Massive mechanical ships, each the size of a city, moved across the surface like hungry insects. Behind them, they left nothing but stripped rock and ash. Threll's crystal body grew brighter with emotion. "For the first time in 10,000 years, we will send out the emergency signal. Every ship, every station, every world in the galaxy will hear our call for help. Perhaps someone, somewhere, has an answer we do not." The signal went out moments later. It traveled faster than light itself, carrying the desperate words of a dying species to every corner of the galaxy. Most who heard it would do nothing. They had their own worlds to protect. Others would send sympathy messages that meant nothing to the doomed Velani. Far from the council chambers, in the deep space between stars, the human colony ship New Sol moved through the darkness. The massive vessel carried 200,000 humans to their new home on a distant world. They had left Earth 5 years ago, traveling in cold sleep while their ship crossed the vast distances between stars. Captain Kang Do-yun walked through the ship's main corridor, checking on the awakening process. After 5 years of sleep, his people were slowly waking up for the final approach to their new world. The captain was a tall man with kind eyes and hands that showed the scars of hard work. He had been chosen to lead this mission because he could make tough decisions when they mattered most. "Captain," called Lee Minho from the communications center. The young officer looked confused as he stared at his screens. "I'm getting something strange. It's not from Earth, and it's not from our destination." Do-yun walked over to look at the displays. "What kind of signal?" "It's alien, sir," Minho said quietly. "The computer is trying to translate it, but it's like nothing we've ever heard. The signal is coming from everywhere at once, like someone is shouting to the entire galaxy." "Why?" Captain felt his heart beat faster. Humans had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. They had found no signs of other intelligent life during their expansion through their local star systems. Now, it seemed, the universe was much more crowded than they had thought. "Can you understand any of it?" Do-hyun asked. Minho worked at his controls for several minutes. Slowly, words began to appear on his screen. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear enough. "It's a distress call, Captain. Someone called the Velani. They're dying. Something called harvesters is destroying their world. They're asking for help from anyone who can hear them." Do-hyun read the message several times. The words painted a picture of terror and desperation. An entire species was about to be wiped out, and they were calling to the stars for someone, anyone, to save them. "How far away are they?" the captain asked. "About 6 days' travel if we change course now," Minho replied. "But Captain, we don't know anything about these aliens. We don't know if this is real or if it's some kind of trap. Other crew members had gathered around them now. Word was spreading through the ship that they had received an alien message. Dr. Kim Sora, the ship's science officer, pushed through the crowd to read the message herself. She was a small woman with bright eyes and a mind that loved solving puzzles. "This is incredible," she whispered. "We're not alone. There's an entire galactic civilization out there." "A civilization that's under attack," Do-hyun pointed out. "The question is, what do we do about it?" "Sir," said Chief Engineer Park Ji-ho, a stocky man with oil-stained hands, "our mission is to establish a human colony. We have families on this ship, children. Our responsibility is to them." Do-hyun nodded. Ji-ho was right, of course. They had a duty to the people who had trusted them with their lives. But as he read the alien message again, he thought about what it would mean to ignore a call for help. What kind of people would they be if they turned away from someone in need? "How long until the Vellani homeworld falls?" he asked. "According to this," Minho said, checking his translation, "about 72 hours. The captain was quiet for a long moment. Around him, his crew waited for his decision. He thought about the 200,000 people sleeping in the ship's cold storage. He thought about the new world they were supposed to build. Then he thought about an entire species dying while he had the power to help. "Change course for Vela 3, he ordered. "Send a response to that signal. Tell them humans are coming." "Captain," Dr. Sora said carefully, "they don't even know we exist. We're not part of their galactic civilization. Why would they trust us?" "Because," Do-hyun replied, "when someone is drowning, you don't ask for their papers before you throw them a rope." Minho's hands moved over his controls, preparing to send humanity's first message to the galaxy. "What should I tell them, sir?" Do-hyun thought for a moment. "Tell them we received their distress call. Tell them we're coming to help, and tell them that no one fights alone while humans draw breath." The message went out into space, racing toward the Galactic Council chambers. In a few hours, beings from across the galaxy would learn that the species they had dismissed as too primitive to contact had just volunteered to face the unstoppable harvesters. On New Sol, the crew worked frantically to prepare for what was coming. They were going to war against an enemy they had never seen, to save people they had never met. It was, perhaps, the most human thing they could do. The Galactic Council chamber exploded into chaos when the human message arrived. Beings who had lived for hundreds of years stared at their screens in shock. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. A species unknown to the Council had heard their distress call and was coming to help. "This is impossible," declared Advisor Zephys, his 6 arms waving in agitation. "We have detailed scans of this sector. There are no advanced civilizations in that region of space." Council Speaker Threll's crystal body flickered between colors as he processed the information. Yet someone responded. Someone who calls themselves humans. They claim to be 6 days away from Vela 3. "A trick," snapped another council member. "The harvesters are trying to confuse us. They want us to lower our guard." But Dr. Kim Sora's voice came through the communication link, speaking in careful, formal tones. Her words were translated by the Council's computers, creating the first real conversation between humans and the galactic community. "Honorable Council," she said, "I am Dr. Sora of the human colony ship New Sol. We have received your distress signal and are responding to help the Vellani people. We request information about the enemy force and their capabilities." The chamber fell silent. Whoever these humans were, they were treating the situation as if they actually planned to fight the harvesters. It was either very brave or very stupid. Threll activated his personal communicator. "Dr. Sora, this is Council Speaker Threll. Before we discuss military matters, we must understand who you are. Our records show no advanced civilization in your region of space." "That's correct," Sora replied. "Humans have only recently developed faster-than-light travel." This is our first colony mission beyond our home star system. We were not aware that a galactic civilization existed until we received your signal. The implications hit the Council like a shock wave. These humans were primitives by galactic standards. They had just developed space travel and were attempting to fight an enemy that had defeated the galaxy's most advanced militaries. Dr. Sora, Threll said carefully, the Harvesters have destroyed dozens of worlds. 17 of our most advanced military forces have declared the situation hopeless. Perhaps you should reconsider your approach. On New Sol, Dr. Sora looked around the ship's command center. Captain Do-hyun nodded at her to continue. Around them, the crew worked to understand the alien technology described in the Council's data files. Council Speaker Threll, she replied. We understand the danger. But we also understand something else. No one should die alone when others can help. Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that surprised the alien listeners. There was something in the human voice that spoke of determination that went beyond logic. Tell us about the Harvesters. Captain Do-hyun's voice joined the conversation. What are their weaknesses? Advisor Zephys accessed his military files. Captain Do-hyun, the Harvesters are mechanical entities. They appear to be self-replicating machines, possibly created by a species that died out long ago. They have adaptive shields that counter energy weapons. Their ships are heavily armored. They show no interest in communication or negotiation. Chief, Engineer Park Ji-ho listened to the technical data with growing interest. Unlike the aliens, he wasn't thinking about how to avoid the Harvesters. He was thinking about how to break them. What about kinetic weapons? Ji-ho asked. Physical projectiles, explosives, ramming attacks? The question puzzled the council members. Such tactics were considered primitive and dangerous by galactic standards. Physical attacks? Zephys replied. Such methods are inefficient. The risk to the attacking force is too great. No civilized species uses such brutal tactics. Ji-ho smiled grimly. Good thing we're not civilized by your standards. Dr. Sora tried to explain human nature to the confused aliens. Honorable Council, you must understand that humans evolved differently than your species. Our homeworld, Earth, is what you might call a death world. We developed as persistence hunters, capable of tracking prey for days without rest. We are adapted for survival in hostile environments. Impossible, declared a council member. No intelligent species could evolve under such conditions. Yet here we are, Captain Do-hyun said. Dr. Sora, show them the data about Earth. For the next hour, Dr. Sora transmitted information about human evolution and Earth's environment. The council members grew increasingly amazed as they learned about gravity twice as strong as most inhabited worlds, an atmosphere that would poison many species, extreme weather patterns, and predators that could kill with ease. Your species survived ice ages? Threll asked in wonder. Volcanic eruptions? Asteroid impacts? We didn't just survive them, Dr. Sora explained. We adapted to them. Humans can function in temperature ranges that would kill most galactic species. We can survive injuries that would be fatal to others. We can go without food or water for extended periods, and when threatened, we don't calculate odds. We fight. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Vela 3. The Harvester fleet had begun their final assault. The planet had perhaps 48 hours left. Council members, Captain Do-hyun's voice cut through their panic. We'll be there in 5 days. That gives us time to prepare. We need detailed scans of the Harvester ships, their movement patterns, and any tactical data you have. Captain, Threll said desperately, you don't understand. These machines have defeated forces, far more advanced than yours. They learn from each encounter, adapting their defenses. What you're attempting is suicide. Maybe, Do-hyun replied. But it's our choice to make. And sometimes, Threll, suicide runs are the only way to win. As the communication ended, the council chamber buzzed with worried conversation. These humans were clearly primitive by galactic standards, but there was something about them that was different. They spoke of death and sacrifice as if these were acceptable prices for victory. On New Sol, the crew worked through the night to prepare for battle. Engineer Jiho and his teams began modifying their mining equipment into weapons. Security. Chief Han Jisoo organized combat training for the colonists. Medical Officer Yoon Seok prepared the ship's hospitals for casualties. Dr. Sora continued her conversations with the Council, learning everything she could about galactic civilization and the Harvester threat. What she learned worried her. Galaxy species were advanced and peaceful, but they had grown soft over thousands of years of civilization. They fought wars with rules and limitations, treating combat as a game with boundaries. Humans, she realized, were about to show them that some fights had no rules at all. "Captain," she reported to Do-hyun, "I don't think they understand what we're planning to do." "Good," the captain replied. "If the Harvesters are as adaptable as the Council claims, then our best advantage is doing something they've never seen before." In the deep space around Vela 3, the Harvester fleet continued its methodical destruction of the Vellani homeworld. The mechanical ships showed no emotion, no hesitation, no mercy. They had done this countless times before, and they would do it countless times again. They had no way of knowing that something was coming that would change everything. The training deck of New Sol had never been designed for combat preparation, but Security Chief Han Jisoo was making it work. The large chamber spun slowly, creating artificial gravity that could be adjusted from 0 to twice Earth normal. Right now, it was set to standard Earth gravity, which meant it was crushing by galactic standards. "Again!" Jisoo shouted as a group of colonists practiced combat movements. These were farmers, engineers, teachers, and shop owners. A week ago, they had been sleeping peacefully, dreaming of their new world. Now they were learning how to fight machines that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. The Galactic Council observers watched through video feeds in amazement. They had asked to see human combat training, expecting something similar to their own civilized military exercises. What they saw instead looked like controlled violence. "They're training in gravity that would crush most Council species," Advisor Zephys commented to his colleagues. "And they're doing it while wearing heavy protective gear." On the screen, Jisoo demonstrated a combat technique to his students. The movement was fast and brutal, designed to disable an opponent quickly and permanently. There were no rules about fair fighting or protecting the enemy from harm. "This is how humans fight?" asked a council member. "With such intensity?" Dr. Kim Sora, who was still serving as translator between the humans and aliens, tried to explain. "You have to understand our history. For thousands of years, humans fought each other and the dangerous animals on our world. We developed warfare as a survival skill, not as a sport." The camera switched to another part of the training deck, where Engineer Park Jiho was teaching colonists how to use improvised weapons. Tools meant for building homes were being turned into instruments of war. A farming tool became a blade. A construction device became a launcher for explosive charges. "Remarkable," whispered Threll. "They're turning civilian equipment into military hardware in a matter of hours." "It's what we do." Captain Do-hyun's voice came through the communication link. "Humans adapt. When we don't have the right tool for a job, we make one." The council members had been sending more detailed information about the Harvesters, including technical specifications and combat recordings. What they showed painted a grim picture. The mechanical enemies were not just powerful, they were smart. They learned from each encounter, adapting their tactics and defenses to counter whatever they faced. "Captain," Threll said carefully, "I must ask you to reconsider. The Harvesters have defeated forces with technology centuries ahead of yours. They have energy shields that can stop our most powerful weapons. Their armor can withstand direct hits from antimatter cannons." Do-hyun was quiet for a moment, studying the data. "Tell me, Threll, have any of those advanced forces tried ramming attacks?" "Ramming attacks?" The council speaker's crystal body flickered with confusion. "You mean Deliberately crashing ships into enemy vessels? That's exactly what I mean. Such tactics are barbaric. The loss of life would be enormous. No civilized species would consider such waste. Good, Do-hyun replied. Then the harvesters won't expect it either. Dr. Sora continued her role as cultural translator, helping the aliens understand human thinking. Council members, you keep using the word civilized as if it's always good. But sometimes being civilized means being predictable. You fight wars with rules and limits. Humans fight wars to win. She paused, choosing her words carefully. When humans are threatened, we don't think about acceptable losses or proper tactics. We think about survival. And we're very good at surviving. To prove her point, she shared more data about Earth's history. The council members watched in fascination and horror as they learned about human wars, natural disasters, and the countless ways humans had found to not just survive, but thrive in impossible conditions. Your species survived an ice age by following herds of massive animals across continents? Asked one alien. On foot? For thousands of miles, Sora confirmed. We're persistence hunters. We don't give up. Medical Officer Yoon Seok joined the conversation to discuss human biology. What he revealed made the aliens even more concerned about what they were dealing with. Human bones are incredibly dense, Seok explained. Our muscle structure is designed for Earth's heavy gravity. We can function with internal injuries that would kill most species. We have redundant organs, rapid healing, and the ability to ignore pain when necessary. Ignore pain? Zephys sounded shocked. How is that possible? Adrenaline, Seok replied simply. When humans are in danger, our bodies flood with chemicals that increase strength, speed, and pain tolerance. We can literally fight until our bodies shut down from damage. The implications were staggering. The council had been thinking of humans as primitives with basic technology. Now they were beginning to understand that humans were primitives with basic technology who had evolved into living weapons. Han Jisu's training continued around the clock. He organized the colonists into combat groups, teaching them to work together as fighting units. But more importantly, he was teaching them to think like soldiers instead of civilians. The enemy is a machine, he told one group. It thinks logically, calculates odds, follows patterns. That's its strength and its weakness. Machines expect rational behavior, so we're going to be completely irrational. He demonstrated by showing them how to use their own ship's systems as weapons. The artificial gravity could be turned into a weapon by rapidly changing its strength and direction. The atmospheric controls could create sudden pressure changes that would damage mechanical systems. Even the lighting could be weaponized by creating strobing effects that might confuse enemy sensors. You're going to turn your own ship into a weapon? Asked a council observer. If necessary, Jisu replied. Humans don't separate between tools and weapons. Everything can be used to fight if you're creative enough. As New Seoul traveled toward the battle zone, more aliens joined the communication channels. Species from across the galaxy wanted to see these strange deathworlders who thought they could succeed where advanced civilizations had failed. What they found was not a military force in any sense they understood. The humans had no formal ranks beyond those needed for ship operations. They argued with their officers, questioned orders, and made suggestions that would be considered insubordination in any organized military. But there was something else there, too. A unity of purpose that went beyond military discipline. These humans had chosen to risk everything for strangers they had never met. When asked why, their answers were always simple. Because it's the right thing to do. Because no one should die alone. Because if we don't help them, who will? Dr. Sora tried to explain this to the puzzled aliens. You have to understand that humans form emotional bonds very quickly. We've already adopted the Villani as part of our tribe. When humans protect their tribe, they don't calculate costs. They just fight. Even unto death? Threll asked. Especially unto death, Sora replied. Humans have a saying, "No one left behind." It means we don't abandon our people even if saving them costs us everything. But the Villani aren't your people, protested a council member. You've never even met them. They are now, Captain. Do-hyun's voice cut through the conversation. The moment they called for help, they became our responsibility. That's what it means to be human. In the depths of space, the Harvester fleet continued its methodical destruction of Vela 3. The mechanical minds that controlled the fleet were analyzing all available data about galactic military forces, preparing for any possible intervention. They had detailed files on every known species and their combat capabilities. They had adapted their defenses to counter every weapon system and tactic in the galactic arsenal, but they had no files on humans, and they had no idea what was coming for them. The view screen on New Sol showed a sight that made even the experienced crew members catch their breath. Vela 3 hung in space like a wounded animal, its once blue surface now scarred with brown wounds where the harvesters had been feeding. Massive mechanical ships, each one kilometers long, moved across the planet's surface in perfect formation. 17 harvester vessels, reported Communications Officer Lee Minho. The largest fleet ever recorded in a single attack. Captain Do-hyun stood in the command center, studying the enemy formation through the ship's sensors. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no dramatic speeches. These people had already accepted what they might have to do. Range to the nearest harvester? He asked. 400,000 kilometers, replied Navigator Choi Hana from her station. They've detected us, Captain. The entire fleet is changing course to intercept. On the Council communication channel, panic filled the alien voices. Captain Do-hyun, Threll's voice crackled through the speakers. You must retreat immediately. No single ship has ever engaged a harvester fleet and survived. Then we'll be the first, Do-hyun replied calmly. The harvester ships were moving now, their sleek metal forms cutting through space like sharks, sensing blood in the water. Each ship bristled with weapons that had destroyed countless worlds. Their shields flickered with energy patterns that had turned aside every weapon the galaxy could produce. Dr. Kim Sora watched the tactical display with fascination rather than fear. Look at their formation, she said to the command crew. Perfect efficiency, optimal spacing, logical deployment, they're thinking like machines. Good, said Security Chief Han Ji-soo. Machines are predictable. Engineer Park Ji-ho's voice came over the internal communication system. Captain, we're as ready as we're going to be. All civilian equipment has been converted. The mining charges are armed and loaded into the cargo shuttles. What Ji-ho had created would have horrified any civilized military force. The humans had turned their colony supplies into weapons of war. Farming tools became close combat weapons. Construction explosives became ship-killing bombs. Even the colony's medical supplies had been weaponized, turned into chemical weapons that could damage mechanical systems. Pilot Hana, Do-hyun said, to the young woman at the navigation station. Take us in. Target the lead harvester. Sir, Hana replied. That ship is 3 times our size and has enough firepower to destroy a moon. Tactical analysis says we have 0 chance of survival in a direct assault. Then it's a good thing we're not going to give them time for tactical analysis, the captain replied. The first exchange of fire lit up the space between the ships. The harvesters opened with energy weapons that could have melted a city. Their targeting was perfect, their power overwhelming. The beams struck New Sol's shields and were absorbed harmlessly. Impossible, came Advisor Zephyr's voice over the council channel. No shields can stop harvester primary weapons. These aren't shields, Engineer Ji-ho explained as he worked frantically at his station. We're using the ship's magnetic field generators to deflect their energy weapons. It won't work for long, but it doesn't have to. New Sol accelerated directly toward the lead harvester ship. It was a move so simple and so dangerous that the mechanical minds controlling the enemy fleet took several seconds to process what was happening. In those seconds, the human ship closed half the distance between them. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed," announced Captain Do Yun. Throughout the ship, humans strapped themselves into crash positions and checked their equipment one final time. They knew what was coming next. The Harvester fleet adjusted their formation, bringing more weapons to bear on the approaching human ship. But their formations were designed for long-range combat between civilized species. They were not prepared for an enemy that intended to crash directly into them. 5 kilometers in closing," reported Hana. "Harvester ship is attempting to move. Away, but we're too close. Impact in 30 seconds. All shuttle pilots, prepare for launch," ordered Jisu. "Remember, you go in fast, hit hard, and don't stop until they're broken." The collision, when it came, shook both ships like earthquakes. New Sol's reinforced bow crashed into the Harvester's hull with the force of a small asteroid. The impact drove deep into the enemy ship's structure, wedging the human vessel partially inside the mechanical monster. Before the Harvesters could react, human combat shuttles launched from New Sol's cargo bays. Each small ship carried a crew of colonists armed with improvised weapons and enough explosives to level a building. They flew directly into the gap created by the collision, disappearing into the Harvester ship's interior. "What are they doing?" asked a horrified council observer. "Boarding action," replied Dr. Sora matter-of-factly. "If you can't destroy the enemy from outside, you go inside and break them from within." The concept was so alien to galactic thinking that many council members couldn't understand it at first. Civilized species fought at long range with energy weapons and guided missiles. The idea of actually boarding an enemy ship and fighting hand-to-hand was beyond their comprehension. Inside the Harvester ship, the human boarding parties spread out like a virus through the mechanical corridors. They moved in small groups using their knowledge of engineering to target critical systems. Where they found resistance, they fought with a ferocity that shocked their alien observers. Security Chief Jisu led one team through a passage lined with defensive machines. The Harvester robots were efficient killers, but they were programmed to fight other machines and energy weapons. They had no defense against humans who threw explosive charges by hand and used farming tools as clubs. "Contact rear," called out. One of the colonists, a farmer named Kang Mino, who had never held a weapon until a week ago. He swung a modified harvesting blade at a Harvester robot, cutting through armor that was designed to stop energy beams. The mechanical defenders had been built to counter sophisticated weapons, not crude physical attacks delivered with human strength and determination. Their adaptive systems tried to adjust, but they could not adapt fast enough to match human unpredictability. Engineer Jiho's voice crackled through their communication devices. "Teams 1 and 3, you need to reach the central processing core. If we can plant charges there, we can kill this whole ship." "On our way," replied Jisu, leading his team deeper into the enemy vessel. Behind them, they left a trail of destroyed machines and severed cables. The Harvester ship was starting to show signs of damage as critical systems went offline. Pilot Hana had stayed with New Sol, using the ship's weapons to provide cover for the boarding teams. But the other Harvester ships were closing in now, their weapons charging for a final attack that would destroy both ships. "Captain," she called out, "we've got multiple incoming. I count 8 Harvester ships converging on our position." "Time to impact?" 2 minutes, sir." Captain Do-hyun made a calculation that would have been impossible for any other species. He was weighing the lives of his crew against the chance of success, and he was doing it without hesitation. "All boarding teams, you have 90 seconds to complete your mission," he announced. "After that, we're detonating New Sol's reactor." The announcement sent shockwaves through the council observers. "You're going to destroy your own ship?" Threll asked in horror. "If that's what it takes," Do-hyun replied. "Better to die fighting than to let the Harvesters add our technology to their collection." Inside the Harvester ship, the human teams worked with desperate efficiency. They planted explosives on power conduits, severed communication cables, and destroyed anything that looked important. Medical Officer Yoon Seok's team had found what appeared to be the ship's central computer core and was placing their largest charges around it. 30 seconds, came Hana's voice. All teams need to evacuate now. But some of the teams were too deep inside the enemy ship. They would never make it back to their shuttles in time. Without hesitation, they volunteered to stay behind and ensure the charges detonated properly. "Tell our families we died for something that mattered," called out one colonist before cutting his communication link. The evacuation was chaos and heroism mixed together. Some shuttles made it back to New Seoul with their crews intact. Others were destroyed by Harvester defenses as they tried to escape. A few managed to reach friendly space but had to leave their pilots behind. When the explosives detonated, the result was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Harvester ship's central core exploded in a chain reaction that tore the massive vessel apart from the inside. Secondary explosions rippled through its hull as stored energy and ammunition added to the destruction. The lead Harvester ship, which had seemed invincible just minutes before, broke apart in a brilliant flash of light and debris. For the first time in 300 years, a Harvester ship had been destroyed. The silence on the Council communication channels lasted for nearly a minute before Threll's shaking voice broke through. How did you do that?" Captain Do-Yun, his ship damaged but still flying, watched the debris of the enemy vessel drift past his viewports. "We did what humans do best," he replied. "We refused to accept that it was impossible." The celebration lasted exactly 47 minutes. That was how long it took for the Harvester reinforcements to arrive. New Seoul limped through space, her hull scarred and her crew exhausted from the first battle. They had proven that Harvesters could be destroyed, but the cost had been enormous. Nearly 300 colonists had died in the boarding action, and the ship's main drive was damaged beyond quick repair. "Captain," reported Lee Min-ho from his communication station, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching from deep space. Multiple contacts, all showing Harvester profiles." The tactical display lit up with new contacts. 3 ships, each one larger than the vessel they had just destroyed, emerged from faster-than-light travel. These were not the standard Harvester destroyers. These were hive ships, mobile factories that could build entire fleets while consuming planets. "Dear gods," whispered Threll's voice over the Council channel. "They've sent hive ships. No force in galactic history has ever faced 3 hive ships and survived." Captain Do-Hyun studied the approaching enemies with the same calm expression he had worn throughout the first battle. Around him, his crew worked to repair damage and prepare for the next fight. There was no talk of retreat, no discussion of surrender. They had come here to save the Villani, and they would keep fighting until they succeeded or died trying. "Dr. Sora," he called to the science officer, "what can you tell me about these hive ships?" Sora consulted the data the Council had provided. "Each one is approximately 15 kilometers long. They carry thousands of smaller Harvester units and can manufacture more during combat. Their armor is significantly thicker than the destroyers, and their weapons are powerful enough to crack moons. Weaknesses? According to Council records, none that have been successfully exploited." Engineer Park Ji-ho looked up from his repair work. "Captain, I've been studying the wreckage from our first kill. The Harvesters use a distributed computer network throughout their ships. Damage one part, and the others compensate. But if you can overload the entire system at once..." "What are you thinking, Ji-ho?" "The mining charges we used were effective, but they were designed for breaking rocks. Give me 6 hours and access to the Harvester wreckage, and I can build something much more interesting." While Ji-ho worked on his new weapons, Medical Officer Yoon Seok treated the wounded from the first battle. What he found amazed the Council, observers who were monitoring their activities. "Impossible," declared a Council medical advisor. Your casualty reports show humans fighting effectively with injuries that should be fatal. Siok looked up from treating a colonist who had taken shrapnel in the chest but had continued fighting for another 20 minutes. Humans are tough to kill, he said simply. We evolved to keep going even when badly hurt. He gestured to another patient, a woman who had lost her left arm in an explosion but had used her right hand to detonate charges that destroyed a critical harvester system. Pain is just information to humans. We can choose to ignore it when we need to. But the blood loss alone should have killed her, protested the alien medic. Human blood clots quickly, and we have excellent circulation redundancy, Siok explained. Plus, adrenaline helps us function well beyond normal biological limits. This woman has enough fight-or-flight chemicals in her system to keep her conscious and active for hours, even with severe trauma. The conversation was interrupted by an announcement from Navigator Hana. All hands, prepare for combat. The Hive. Ships will be in weapons range in 30 minutes. Throughout New Seoul, the colonists prepared for what everyone knew would be their final battle. They had damaged the ship too badly in the first fight to survive another collision. Their weapons were mostly exhausted, and they were outnumbered by an impossible margin. But Engineer Jiho had been busy. "Captain," he called from the engineering section, "I need to show you something." Do-Yun made his way through the ship's corridors, passing groups of colonists who waved and smiled as he went by. These people knew they were probably going to die, but they showed no signs of fear or regret. If anything, they seemed proud of what they had accomplished. In the engineering bay, Jiho had created something that looked like a cross between a mining charge and a piece of abstract art. Cables and circuit boards were woven together in patterns that made no sense to anyone except their creator. "What am I looking at?" Do-Yun asked. "A feedback bomb," Jiho replied with satisfaction. "I analyzed the computer systems from the harvester wreckage. Their networks are incredibly sophisticated, but they all operate on the same base protocols. This device will connect to their system and then overload it with recursive calculations. In simple terms, it asks the harvester computers a question they can't answer, then forces them to keep trying until their processors burn out. One of these devices can crash an entire ship's network. How many do we have? 3, 1 for each Hive ship. The problem, of course, was getting the devices close enough to work. The feedback bombs had to be physically connected to harvester systems, which meant another boarding action. With New Seoul too damaged to ram another enemy ship, they would have to find another way. "Pilot Hana," Do-Yun called over the internal communication system. "Report to engineering." When the young pilot arrived, she found Do-Yun and Jiho standing over a modified cargo shuttle. The small ship had been stripped of everything unnecessary and loaded with armor plating salvaged from their mining equipment. "We need someone to fly 3 suicide runs," Do-Hyun explained. "Each shuttle carries 1 feedback bomb and enough conventional explosives to ensure it penetrates the enemy hull. The pilot's job is to get inside the Hive ship and plant the device on their main computer core." Hana studied the modified shuttle with professional interest. "Survival probability?" 0, Jiho said honestly. "These ships are designed to crash into targets and explode. There's no way back." "I'll take the first run," Hana said without hesitation. "No," Do-Hyun replied. "I'm taking the first run. You'll take the second, and Jisoo will take the third." "Captain, you can't risk yourself on—" "I can, and I will," Do-Yun cut her off. "These people followed me into this fight. The least I can do is lead them in the final attack." The Hive ships opened fire when New Seoul came within range. Their weapons were beyond anything the humans had faced before. Energy beams that could melt continents lashed out across space, turning the area around the colony ship into a hell of radiation and plasma. But New Seoul didn't try to fight back with weapons. Instead, the damaged ship began a complex evasive pattern, using her remaining thrusters to dance between the incoming fire. It was a move that required split-second timing and nerves of steel. "Launch window in 30 seconds. announced Hana from the Flight Control Center. Captain Do-hyun sat in the cockpit of his suicide shuttle, checking his systems one final time. The feedback bomb sat beside him, looking innocent but carrying the hopes of an entire species. Behind him, enough explosives to level a city block waited to ensure he could penetrate the enemy hull. "Captain," came Dr. Sora's voice over his communication link, "the Council wants to know why you're doing this. They can't understand why humans would sacrifice themselves for strangers." Do-hyun thought about the question as he watched the massive Harvester Hive ship growing larger in his view screen. It was a good question, really. Why were they doing this? "Tell them," he said finally, "that this is what humans do. When someone needs help, we help. When someone is in danger, we protect them. It doesn't matter if they're strangers or aliens or people we'll never meet. They're in trouble, and we can help, so we do. Even if it costs you everything?" "Especially then," Do-hyun replied. "What good is a life if you don't spend it on something that matters?" "Launch window open," called Hana. "Go get them, Captain." The suicide shuttle shot out of New Seoul's cargo bay like a bullet from a gun. Behind it, the colony ship continued her desperate evasion pattern, drawing fire away from the small attack craft. Captain Do-hyun flew straight into the teeth of the Harvester defenses, his shuttle's armor taking hit after hit from defensive weapons. The small ship shook and bucked like a living thing, but Jiho's modifications held. Layers of mining equipment and cargo containers absorbed the damage, protecting the vital systems inside. The collision with the Hive ship was even more violent than the first ramming attack. Do-hyun's shuttle punched through the outer hull and buried itself deep in the ship's interior structure. Emergency systems sealed the breach, trapping the human pilot inside the mechanical monster. But that was exactly what Do-hyun had planned. Moving through the damaged shuttle, he gathered his equipment and began the long journey to the ship's computer core. Unlike the smaller Harvester destroyer, the Hive ship was a maze of passages and chambers. Finding the right target would take time he didn't have, so he did what humans do best. He improvised. Instead of searching for the main computer core, Do-hyun began planting small charges on every important-looking system he could find. When he triggered the feedback bomb, it would spread through the ship's network, but the physical explosions would ensure that damaged systems couldn't be easily repaired. "Second, shuttle away," came Hana's voice over his radio. She was beginning her own suicide run against the second Hive ship. The destruction of 3 Harvester Hive ships sent shockwaves through the galaxy that had nothing to do with the explosions themselves. For the first time in 3 centuries, someone had not just fought the Harvesters and survived, but had actually won a decisive victory. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council chambers buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of species tried to understand what they had witnessed. The humans, these unknown Deathworlders, had accomplished what the galaxy's greatest military minds had declared impossible. But the celebration was premature. "Captain Do-hyun is dead," reported Dr. Kim Sora, her voice heavy with grief. "So are Pilot Hana and Security Chief Jisoo. They succeeded in their missions, but none of the suicide shuttles survived the explosions. New Seoul drifted in space, her hull cracked and her crew decimated. Of the 200,000 colonists who had begun this journey, fewer than 100,000 remained. The ship's main drive was completely destroyed, and life support was failing in several sections." "This is Council Speaker Threll," came the alien's voice over the communication channel. "Human vessel New Seoul, we are dispatching rescue ships to your position. Your sacrifice has saved the Villani homeworld and shown the galaxy that the Harvesters can be defeated." "Rescue ships won't be necessary," replied Strategic Advisor Nam Junho, who had taken command after the captain's death. He was a quiet man who had spent most of the journey studying galactic politics and military theory. Now he found himself leading humanity's first contact with alien civilization. "We still have work to do," Junho continued. "Our sensors show Harvester reinforcements approaching. This was just the advance fleet. The main force is still coming. The news hit the council like a physical blow. They had been celebrating humanity's victory, but the humans were already preparing for the next battle. Advisor Junho, Threll said carefully, "Your ship is heavily damaged. Your population has suffered enormous losses. Surely you must withdraw and allow others to continue the fight." "With respect, Council Speaker, that's not how humans work. We don't start fights, but we finish them." What Junho didn't say, but what Dr. Sora understood, was that the humans had bonded with the Villani during the battle. In human psychology, the blue-skinned aliens were no longer strangers to be helped. They were family to be protected. The proof of this came from an unexpected source. As New Sol broadcast the news of their victory throughout the galaxy, other species began to respond. Not the advanced civilizations that had already declared the situation hopeless, but the smaller, weaker species that the Council had never expected to fight. "This is the Zilani Defense Force," came a transmission from a nearby star system. "We heard about the human victory. Our ships are old and our weapons are weak, but we're coming to help." More voices joined the channel. The Korthak Mining Collective offered their industrial ships. The Fenari Trade Confederation volunteered their fast courier vessels. Even the peaceful Antari, who had never fought a war in their recorded history, sent messages of support. Dr. Sora found herself in the strange position of becoming humanity's first ambassador to a galactic civilization that was rapidly reorganizing itself around human military doctrine. "Why are they responding like this?" asked Advisor Zephys during one of their coordination meetings. "These species have never shown any interest in military cooperation before." "Because you showed them it was possible," Sora explained. "For 300 years, you've told them that the harvesters were unbeatable. Now we've proven that's not true. Hope is a powerful motivator." The first Allied ships to arrive were from the Zilani, a species of blue-scaled reptilians who had developed space travel only recently. Their vessels were crewed by galactic standards, but they had something more important: crews who had watched the human battle recordings and learned from them. Human ship New Sol, called Captain Voss of the Zilani vessel Proudclaw. "We come to learn your fighting methods. Teach us how to kill the metal demons." Strategic Advisor Junho found himself in the position of teaching alien species how to fight like humans. It was not an easy task. Most galactic species had evolved on peaceful worlds with abundant resources. They had no instinct for the kind of desperate, all-or-nothing combat that came naturally to humans. But they were eager to learn. "The key," Junho explained to a gathering of alien ship captains, "is to stop thinking like civilized beings and start thinking like survivors. The harvesters are machines. They calculate odds, analyze threats, and respond logically. So you have to be illogical." He used the humans' first victory as an example. A rational military force would have tried to engage the harvesters at long range with superior weapons. "We rammed them and boarded their ships with mining tools." They had no programming for that kind of insanity. Captain Voss of the Zilani studied the tactical recordings with intense interest. "Your people died in large numbers to achieve this victory. How do you accept such losses?" "Because we don't see them as losses," Dr. Sora interjected. "In human culture, dying to protect others is considered the highest honor. Captain Do-hyun didn't lose his life. He spent it on something worthwhile." The concept was alien to most galactic species, but some of them began to understand. The Korthak miners, who worked in dangerous conditions and had their own traditions of sacrifice for the group, adapted quickly. The Fenari traders, who understood the value of calculated risks, began to see the logic in human tactics. Engineer Park Ji-ho, who had survived the suicide runs by remaining on New Sol, worked with alien technical teams to adapt human weapons for their ships. What he found was that most species had vastly superior technology, but had never thought to use it aggressively. "Your energy shields are incredible," he told a Zalani engineer. "But you use them only for defense. What if you overloaded them and turned them into weapons?" "The feedback would destroy our own ship," the alien replied. "Not if you did it right before ramming an enemy vessel," Jiho pointed out. "The explosion would take out both ships, but you'd get to choose the target." It was a typically human solution: turn a defensive system into a suicide weapon. The aliens were horrified and fascinated in equal measure. As more ships arrived, Junho organized them into what he called desperation squadrons. Each group combined human tactics with alien technology, creating fighting units that the Harvesters had never encountered before. The Vellani themselves, who had been the original victims in this conflict, proved to be surprisingly adaptable students. Their natural intelligence and strategic thinking, combined with human aggressiveness, created some of the most effective hybrid tactics. "We owe you a debt that can never be repaid," said Vellani Prime Minister Kess during one of their strategy sessions. Her people had blue skin and large, intelligent eyes that reminded the humans of dolphins. "You saved our world when our own government had given up hope." "You don't owe us anything," replied Medical Officer Yoon Seok, who had taken over diplomatic duties from Dr. Sora. "This is what allies do for each other." The word allies had deep meaning for humans, and Seok made sure the aliens understood it. In human culture, an ally wasn't just a temporary partner. It was someone you fought beside, bled with, and protected even at the cost of your own life. "When this is over," Seok told the assembled alien leaders, "humans will remember who stood with us when it mattered, and we will stand with you whenever you need us, for as long as our species exists." It was a promise that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. The new alliance was tested sooner than anyone expected. Long-range sensors detected the approaching Harvester main fleet, over 40 ships, including massive factory vessels that could strip a planet bare in days. "This is the real test," Strategic Advisor Junho announced to the combined fleet. The advance force was just scouting. This is what a full Harvester invasion looks like. The Allied fleet that assembled to meet them was unlike anything in galactic history. Human colony ships fought alongside Zalani warships and Korthak miners. Fenari traders flew in formation with Vellani patrol craft. It was a desperate collection of misfits and outcasts, led by a damaged human vessel that should have been in a scrapyard. But they had something the Harvesters had never faced before. They had learned to fight like humans. "All ships," Junho broadcast to the fleet, "remember what we've taught you. Be unpredictable, be willing to sacrifice, and above all, protect each other. We're not just defending the Vellani anymore. We're defending the idea that people can choose to help each other instead of just looking out for themselves." The Harvester main fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of metal locusts. Their formation was perfect, their weapons charged, their tactics proven over 3 centuries of victory. They had no idea what they were flying into. "All ships," came Navigator Choi Hana's recorded voice, playing back from New Seoul's computers. As a final gift from the dead pilot, "This is for everyone who can't fight back. This is for everyone who needs someone to stand up for them. This is for everyone who believes that doing the right thing matters more than being safe." The combined fleet charged into battle, flying human tactics with alien technology, ready to prove that sometimes the impossible just takes a little longer to accomplish. The main Harvester fleet was a sight that had brought despair to countless civilizations. 43 ships moved through space in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting starlight like the carapaces of giant insects. At the center of the formation was something no one in the galaxy had seen before: a Harvester Command Nexus, a massive vessel that coordinated the actions of every machine in their fleet. Strategic Advisor Nam Junho studied the enemy formation from New Seoul's damaged command center. Around him, the survivors of humanity's first interstellar colony worked with quiet determination. They had lost their captain, their security chief, their best pilot, and tens of thousands of their people, but they had not lost their purpose. The Nexus ship, Dr. Kim Sora said, pointing to the massive vessel on their tactical display. If we could destroy that, the entire fleet would lose coordination. It's 15 kilometers long and surrounded by the entire Harvester fleet, replied Medical Officer Yoon Seok. Even if we could reach it, our weapons wouldn't scratch that armor. Engineer Park Ji-ho looked up from his workstation. Actually, we do have one weapon that might work. He gestured around them at New Seoul itself. Our fusion reactors are still intact. If we overloaded them properly, the explosion would be bigger than anything the Harvesters have ever faced. The suggestion hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone understood what Ji-ho was proposing. To destroy the Nexus ship, they would have to ram New Seoul directly into it and detonate their own reactors. It would be suicide on a massive scale. How big an explosion? Junho asked quietly. Big enough to destroy everything within 1,000 kilometers, Ji-ho replied, including us. Communications Officer Lee Minho turned from his station. Sir, I'm receiving messages from the Allied fleet. They're asking for orders. On the communication channels, voices from across the galaxy waited for human leadership. The Zelani, the Korthak, the Fenari, and a dozen other species had come to fight beside the humans. They looked to New Seoul for guidance, even though the human ship was barely functional. Tell them to engage the outer ships, Junho ordered. Draw as many Harvesters away from the Nexus as possible. We'll handle the center of their formation. Sir, Minho said carefully, the crews are asking about evacuation procedures for New Seoul. Should I tell them about the plan? Junho was quiet for a moment. The ethical weight of the decision pressed down on him like a physical force. They were talking about sacrificing 60,000 people, including children who had been born during the journey to their new world. Put me on ship-wide communication, he finally said. Throughout New Seoul, human voices fell silent as their new commander prepared to address them. In the damaged cargo bays, families huddled together among emergency supplies. In the medical centers, wounded colonists waited for treatment. In the engineering sections, crews worked to keep their dying ship functional for just a little longer. People of New Seoul, Junho began, you know our situation. We're cut off from Earth. Our ship is dying, and we're facing an enemy that has terrorized the galaxy for centuries. But we've also proven something important. We've shown that the Harvesters can be beaten. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm going to be honest with you about what comes next. To destroy the Harvester command ship, we need to ram them with New Seoul and detonate our reactors. Anyone who stays on this ship will die. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, voices began to respond over the internal communication system. Do it, said a farmer who had lost his wife in the first battle. We're with you, called a teacher who had been training children for their new world. For the Vellani, added an engineer who had worked beside Park Ji-ho to convert their tools into weapons. One by one, voices throughout the ship voted to sacrifice themselves for strangers they had never met. It was, perhaps, the most human decision ever made. But Dr. Sora had a different idea. Wait, she called out. We don't all have to die. The Vellani ships can take survivors. We could evacuate everyone except the crew needed to fly the ship. How many crew would that require? Asked Junho. Engineer Ji-ho calculated quickly. Minimum of 500. Someone to fly the ship, someone to maintain the reactors, someone to handle navigation, and crews to make sure the systems don't fail before we reach the target. I'll coordinate the evacuation, offered Yoon Seok. We can get the non-essential personnel off the ship within 6 hours. But the volunteer response was immediate and overwhelming. Nearly 2,000 colonists volunteered to stay behind and ensure the mission succeeded. They were teachers, farmers, shopkeepers, and families who had already lost so much that they saw their lives as acceptable payment for victory. The evacuation began immediately. Vellani ships, their holds filled with blue-skinned refugees from their own world, made room for human families. Children who had never seen an alien before found themselves comforted by gentle beings with large eyes and soft voices. Dr. Sora remained on New Sol to coordinate with the Galactic Council and help plan the final attack. As she watched families say goodbye to loved ones who would never leave the ship, she tried to explain human behavior to the confused aliens. "Why are they staying?" asked Valani Prime Minister Kess. "They could escape with honor. No one would think less of them, because that's not how humans think," Sora replied. "We don't measure honor by survival. We measure it by whether we did the right thing when it mattered most." The Allied fleet engaged the Harvester outer ships, while New Sol prepared for her final mission. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Ships designed for peaceful purposes fought with jury-rigged weapons and desperate tactics. Zilani warships overloaded their shields and rammed Harvester destroyers. Korthak mining vessels used their drilling equipment to bore through enemy hulls. The Harvesters, for their part, began to adapt to human tactics. Their computers analyzed the chaotic battle patterns and started to counter them. But adaptation took time, and the Allied fleet bought New Sol the precious hours she needed. Engineer Jiho spent those hours turning the colony ship into the largest bomb in galactic history. He rigged the fusion reactors to overload in sequence, creating a cascade failure that would release more energy than a small star. The explosion would be visible from neighboring star systems. "Reactor charges armed," he reported to the command crew. "Navigation is locked onto the Nexus ship. Once we start the final approach, there's no turning back." Strategic Advisor Junho took one last look around the command center. The crew who remained were volunteers all, people who had chosen duty over survival. They represented the best of humanity, courage, determination, and willingness to sacrifice for others. "All ships," he broadcast to the Allied fleet, "this is New Sol beginning our final approach. When we detonate, the explosion will disable any Harvester ships within 1,000 kilometers. Use that opportunity to finish off the survivors." "Understood, New Sol," came Captain Voss's reply from the Zilani fleet. "It has been an honor to fight beside humans." "The honor was ours," Junho replied. New Sol turned toward the center of the Harvester formation and began to accelerate. The massive Nexus ship, aware of the approaching threat, began to maneuver away from the collision course. But the colony ship's final modifications included ramming thrusters that could not be stopped once activated. Harvester defensive fire lashed out at the approaching human vessel. Energy beams that could have destroyed cities struck New Sols, reinforced hull, and were absorbed by layers of armor and debris that Jiho had welded into place. The ship shook and bucked, but her course never wavered. "Impact in 60 seconds, announced Navigator Choi Min-seo, who had taken over Hana's position. "All hands, prepare for collision." Throughout the ship, the volunteer crew strapped themselves into crash positions and said their final goodbyes. Some recorded messages for families who had evacuated. Others simply sat quietly, at peace with their choice. Dr. Sora opened a final communication channel to the Galactic Council. "Council Speaker Threll, this is Dr. Sora aboard New Sol. When this is over, please remember that humans did this not because we hated the Harvesters, but because we loved the Valani. Love is stronger than hate, hope is stronger than despair, and life is stronger than death." "We will remember," Threll replied, his crystalline voice filled with emotion. "The galaxy will remember." The collision, when it came, was like a small moon crashing into a space station. New Sol's reinforced bow punched deep into the Nexus ship's hull, carrying the colony ship's reactor sections into the heart of the Harvester command vessel. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then Engineer Jiho triggered the reactor overload, and a new star was born in the space around Vela 3. The explosion was so bright that it temporarily blinded sensors throughout the star system. The shock wave raced outward at nearly the speed of light, carrying with it the last testament of humanity's first space colony. When the light faded, The Harvester Nexus ship was gone. So were 6 other Harvester vessels that had been too close to the explosion. The remaining enemy ships drifted in space, their coordination shattered, their command network destroyed. It was the moment the Allied fleet had been waiting for. 6 months after the Battle of Vela 3, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime had been expanded to accommodate new member species, including one that had changed everything: humanity. Dr. Kim Sora stood at the speaker's podium, looking out at representatives from dozens of worlds. She wore a simple black uniform with a small patch showing New Soul's name and the image of a blue-green world. It was the official uniform of what had become known as the Deathworld Defense Corps. "Honored Council members," she began. 6 months ago, humanity received your distress call. Today, I stand before you not as a refugee or a victim, but as the representative of our new alliance. The Harvesters are gone, but the lessons we learned fighting them will protect the galaxy for generations to come. In the months since the battle, everything had changed. The surviving humans from New Sol had been welcomed by the Vellani with honors usually reserved for planetary heroes. Prime Minister Kess had offered them permanent homes on Vela 3, and many had accepted. Others had chosen to spread throughout the galaxy, teaching alien species the tactical innovations that had won the war. The human doctrine, as it had come to be known, was now taught in military academies across 50 star systems. The core principles were simple: be unpredictable, be willing to sacrifice, and never abandon an ally. But the real change went deeper than tactics. Engineer Park Jiho, who had survived the final battle by evacuating with the families, now worked with alien scientists to develop new technologies. The combination of human ingenuity and alien knowledge was producing innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. The feedback bomb principle, he explained to a gathering of council engineers, can be adapted for peaceful purposes. Instead of crashing computer networks, we can use it to solve complex mathematical problems. The same recursive calculations that destroyed harvester ships can map stellar formations or predict weather patterns. Medical Officer Yoon Seok had established the first interspecies medical center on Vela 3. His studies of human biology had led to breakthroughs in treating alien injuries and diseases. But more importantly, he was training alien doctors in what he called battlefield medicine, the art of keeping people alive and fighting even when badly hurt. Human resilience isn't just physical, he explained to his students. It's psychological. Humans can function effectively even when they know they might die. This mindset can be taught to other species, giving them the mental tools to survive disasters and emergencies. The political changes were even more dramatic. The old Galactic Council, which had been dominated by advanced civilizations that avoided conflict, was replaced by something new: the Allied Defense Federation. Membership was open to any species willing to help defend others, regardless of their technology level or military power. Strategic advisor Nam Junho had become the first human member of the Federation Council. His quiet intelligence and deep understanding of both human and alien psychology made him an ideal diplomat. But he never forgot the lessons of New Sol. Power isn't about having the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology, he told a gathering of young alien officers. Power is about being willing to use what you have to protect others. A farmer with a mining tool can defeat a war machine if he has the courage to try. The Vellani had become humanity's closest allies, but they were far from the only ones. The species that had fought beside New Sol at the Battle of Vela 3 formed the core of a new military alliance. The Zalani adapted human tactics to their natural agility. The Korthak used human engineering principles to turn their mining equipment into formidable weapons. The Fenari developed trade networks that could rapidly deploy supplies to threatened worlds. But perhaps the most important change was cultural. The galaxy had learned that species didn't have to be similar to be family. Human children are learning Vellani mathematics, Dr. Sora reported to the council. Vellani children are learning human persistence techniques. Our species are growing closer together through education and shared values. On Vela 3 itself, a new city was rising. New Terra was built as a joint human-Vellani settlement, with architecture that combined the best of both species' designs. Human engineering created strong, practical buildings. Vellani artistry made them beautiful. The result was a place that neither species could have built alone. The city's central monument was simple but powerful, a piece of metal from New Sol's hull, mounted on a base of Vellani crystal. The inscription was written in dozens of languages, but the message was always the same. They came when we called. They stayed when we needed them. They died so we could live.